Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles. I'm 33 years old now, but some parts of my childhood still play in my head like they just happened yesterday. I grew up with my younger brother, Daniel. He's 30 now. And at first glance, anyone would have thought we came from a perfectly normal home. We had a house with a backyard, family dinners, holidays with pictures on the mantel. But underneath all that, our family dynamic was off. Imbalanced, tilted so far in one direction, it sometimes felt like I was the only one trying to keep everything from falling over. Daniel was the miracle baby. That's what everyone called him. My mother had a rough pregnancy. Complications I didn't fully understand as a kid, but I knew they scared my parents. And when he was born, he was sick a lot. Constant infections, wheezing fits that ended in ambulance rides, and too many nights in pediatric ERs. I spent a lot of time sitting in waiting rooms, my legs swinging off the chair, watching the hands on the clock crawl while the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. "Stephen, be quiet, please. Your brother's sleeping." My mother would whisper sharply whenever I so much as rustle the magazine. I remember once asking, "Can I get a snack from the vending machine?" She shot me a look like I just asked for a new car. "Stephen, your brother is sick. Please just sit and behave." That was my role. Sit, behave, be quiet, be understanding. Even when Daniel got better, when the hospital visits stopped, and he could finally run around like a normal kid, my parents, especially my dad, never stopped treating him like he was made of glass. Meanwhile, I had to be flawless. By the time I was 7, I wasn't really allowed to be a kid anymore. I had to get perfect grades, keep my room clean, set a good example. No tantrums, no talking back, no excuses. "Why can't I skip school like Daniel?" I asked once after he stayed home for the 3rd day in a row. My dad didn't even look up from the newspaper, "Because you're not Daniel." That was always the answer, or some version of it. One time in high school, I was 5 minutes late to class after staying up the night before helping with chores. The school gave me detention, and my dad grounded me for a week. That same month, Daniel was caught skipping class to hang out at the mall. I waited for the storm to hit him, but it never came. "Boys will be boys," my mom said, brushing it off with a smile. "At least he's getting out and socializing." I remember standing there, my mouth slightly open, thinking, "Are you kidding me?" At 15, I started working with my dad in his electrical business, not because I dreamed of a future filled with wires and voltage, but because I needed his approval. It felt like the only way to earn even a flicker of his attention. "Stephen, grab me the voltmeter," he said one afternoon, crouched beside an open breaker box. I was still learning the tools, still getting my bearings, but I scrambled to find it. When I finally handed it over, he gave a short nod. "Not bad," he muttered, and it felt like I'd won the lottery. From then on, I was determined. I watched him closely on every job, memorizing the way he stripped wires or diagnosed a faulty panel. When I got home, I stayed up late reading old manuals we had in the garage, and when those weren't enough, I turned to something else. I started watching videos on YouTube, tutorials, breakdowns of circuits, real electricians explaining things. My dad never had the patience to walk me through. In contrast, Daniel always had a knack for performing when it benefited him. He could sound smart, sharp, even when he wanted to impress someone. But the truth is, he had no discipline. He floated through life with that same pathetic sick child routine that had everyone wrapped around his fingers since we were kids. He enrolled in college, stayed for 2 semesters, and dropped out, citing stress. My parents treated it like some tragic setback. I remember the conversation vividly. "I just can't focus, Mom," he said dramatically one evening, sinking into the couch like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "It's all too much." She put a hand on his forehead like he had a fever. "Maybe you need time, sweetheart. You've been under so much pressure." I rolled my eyes from the kitchen. Pressure from what? Remembering to shower? Then came the drop-shipping phase. He spent weeks building a cheap L-looking website, ordering mass-produced junk from overseas and packaging it with a smiley logo. When it flopped, As anyone with half a brain could have predicted, he pivoted to day trading. That one actually scared me because Dad gave him money to invest. "Let him try," Dad said to me when I raised my eyebrows. "He's trying to find his way." "Yeah, well, his way is down," I muttered, and sure enough, he lost almost everything within months. And yet, I was the one constantly getting lectured. "Stephen, you need to be more patient with your brother." My father told me once over dinner, "He's going through a rough patch. He's been going through a rough patch for 30 years. I snapped. At what point is it just who he is? Dad didn't like that. He gave me the classic stare, the one that said, "Don't push it." I can't lie and pretend I didn't care about Daniel. I did. I do. He's my brother. But over time, the love I felt was laced with something else. Resentment, frustration, even guilt. I started to feel like the only reason I was sticking around was because I'd been taught that walking away from family made you the bad guy. Living with him became unbearable. We were complete opposites. I was the serious one, the one up before the sun, showing up to jobs early, working late if it meant getting something right. I kept promises. I followed through. I earned my sleep. Daniel, he floated through life like a party balloon, always carried by someone else's breath. He was the fun one. He cracked jokes. He charmed people. And he never faced any real consequences. The rules were made for others, not for Daniel. Dad's business, small residential and commercial electrical work, was nothing fancy. But it paid the bills. I saw potential, though. On weekends, I dove into research on smart home systems, new wiring standards, security installations, automation. While Dad was content doing things the same way he'd been doing since the 80s, I kept pushing us forward. "Pop, we should offer smart thermostat installs." I said once while we were rewiring a kitchen, "Everyone's into smart homes now. It's what the market wants." Dad grunted. "Fats. People don't care about that stuff." "Sure they do. And if they don't, now they will. We could be ahead of the curve instead of behind it." He didn't say no, but he didn't say yes either. Later I landed a client. A pretty big job installing a full smart system in a newly built duplex. I nailed it. No hiccups, no callbacks, just clean professional work. Even the client left a glowing review. At dinner that night I was waiting, just waiting for my dad to say something like, "Nice job." Or even, "You handled that well." Instead he said, "You know, Daniel's been answering more of the business calls lately. Clients really seem to like him." I blinked. "Are you serious? His charisma helps. Stephen, you have to admit that. Charisma doesn't wire a panel. Dad, I'm the one out there doing the work." But he talks to people, he listens. He even suggested we build a website for the business. I stared at him across the table, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth. "A website?" I asked. "That's what gets the praise." In 2020, as soon as I'd saved enough and felt stable in my income, I finally moved into my own place. It wasn't far, just about 20 minutes from my parents' house, but that distance felt like breathing room. I still helped out with Dad's business, still showed up when needed, but for the first time in my life, I had a space that was mine. Quiet, simple, mine. I was making real progress, and I could feel it. My own house, my own schedule. I'd started, exploring advanced certifications, even thinking about going for my master electrician's license. The idea of eventually opening my own business didn't feel so far-fetched anymore. That's when Michelle entered the picture. She was 29, and I met her while we were rewiring a set of high-end apartments downtown, the kind of place with marble, countertops, concierge service, and balconies bigger than my living room. I just finished chewing out a couple of HVAC guys who'd completely ignored the building specs, ran ductwork where our conduits were supposed to go. "It wasn't pretty, you know," I heard a voice behind me say as I walked away from them. "You might have scared them into doing things properly for once." I turned around and saw her Michelle. Brown eyes, hard hat tilted just slightly off-center, and a clipboard in one hand. I remember thinking, property managers don't usually look this confident. She had a calm authority that was rare on these kinds of job sites. "They should have read the plans," I replied, brushing off some drywall dust from my sleeve. "Sloppy work gets people hurt." "I agree," she said, walking beside me. "And by the way, you're right about the specs. I checked them last. Knight, you're doing solid work out there." It was such a simple comment, but it caught me off guard. Most managers didn't even know how to read specs beyond the dollar signs. But Michelle, she was different. Over the next couple of weeks, she'd walk the site every day, not just to manage, but to actually see how things were being done. She asked questions, real ones, not the fake kind people asked, just to look interested. "So, what's the difference between a 2-wire and 3-wire setup again?" she asked one afternoon, peering into an open junction box beside me. I laughed. "Depends on what you're running. This one's for a split circuit. See that red? That's the extra hot. You only need that when you're dealing with appliances pulling more load," she finished, nodding. "Yeah, my dad used to quiz me on that when I was a kid." I looked at her. "Your dad was an electrician, general contractor," she replied, smiling. "I was his weekend apprentice." I grinned. "That explains it." From there, we talked more about the job, about our families, about why we worked so hard when it felt like no one really noticed. I told her about my push to modernize my dad's old-school business, how I'd been learning smart home systems and code upgrades in the evenings. "Let me guess," she said. One day as we sat on a stack of unused drywall sipping bad coffee. "You're the older sibling," I smirked. "Guilty." "Me too," she said. "I bet I can guess the rest. Your little brother's the charming one who never gets blamed for anything." I nearly dropped my coffee. "Are you serious?" She nodded. "Let me introduce myself properly then. Hi. I'm Michelle and I'm a charter member of the Responsible Sibling Support Audio Group." I laughed harder than I had in weeks. Not long after the downtown apartment project wrapped up, the office phone rang with what Michelle described as an urgent issue in her unit, something about her bedroom outlets not working. Dad, grumbling about how people always waited until the last minute to fix things, handed me the job slip. "Take a look, would you?" he muttered. "That building's brand new, so it's probably not serious." "Sure," I said, already suspecting. Something was up. Michelle didn't seem like the kind of person who called and panicked over a tripped breaker. When I showed up, tool bag in hand, she opened the door with a sly smile. "Glad you could come, Stephen. Hope it wasn't too much trouble." I stepped inside and gave the wall outlets a cursory glance. "So, where's this emergency?" She leaned against the doorframe. "I guess I just missed you." I couldn't help but laugh. "You know, that's probably the smartest service call I've ever answered." "Glad you think so," she said. "Coffee's brewing, by the way." That was the beginning. No games, no confusion, just clarity. Michelle was different. There were no riddles to solve. No need to decode her emotions. If she was upset, she'd tell me. If she was happy, it radiated off her. And she really cared, not just about me, but about the work I did. We did. When I started studying for my master electrician's license, she cleared her schedule to quiz me on tricky code sections. She even sat through hours of online safety courses with me, her eyes starting to glaze over halfway through, but still pushing me to stay focused. "Okay," she'd say, flipping through a flashcard. Article 21052, Go. Receptacle spacing in dwellings. I'd answer automatically, barely looking up. "And how far apart?" 6 FT max. "Boom," she'd say, tapping the card against her knee. "You're going to ace this thing." But Michelle didn't just help me study. She rolled up her sleeves and got involved in the business. At first, it started with her offering to fix the invoices, which were a mess. Then it snowballed. She brought in software to manage schedules, organized digital files for contracts and permits, and started making our quotes look professional instead of like something scribbled on the back of a napkin. One evening, she sat down across from me, laptop open, and said, "We need formal contracts. No more handshakes, and you know my dad deals. It's time to run this like a real company." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure my dad's ready for that?" She gave me a playful look. "He doesn't have to be. We are." At first, Dad grumbled. He still kept a file cabinet with carbon copy forms from the 90s and had this ancient flip phone that made calls sound like walkie-talkies. But once he saw how much smoother things ran, fewer missed appointments, faster payments, no more chasing, down checks, he came around. "This girl," he muttered one day, watching Michelle explain the new estimate software to him, "might be the best thing to happen to this business since Conwood Pipe. Mom loved her from day one. She'd call Michelle to ask about email attachments or how to reset the Wi-Fi, and Michelle would patiently walk her through it, sometimes twice. They bonded over paint colors and bathroom tile, even talked about refinishing the kitchen. One night, after dinner, Mom pulled me aside while Michelle helped clear the dishes. "She's smart." "That one," she said, lowering her voice and kind. "Don't mess this up, Stephen." I smiled. "I'm not planning to." Dad, for his part, softened with time. When Michelle proposed taking on a contract for a new office complex just outside of town, he balked at first. "We've never done anything that big," he said. "But we can," Michelle replied confidently, "and we should, and we did. That job put us on the map. New clients followed. We were finally branching into commercial territory, and our reputation was solid. And surprisingly, maybe the biggest shock of all, Michelle even got along well with Daniel." Looking back, I realized Michelle had been warning me in her own way. Whenever I vented about Daniel, his failed ventures, the constant bailouts, the way he always seemed to get off easy, she would tilt her head thoughtfully and say something, like, "Maybe you should try to understand him better. Stephen, after everything he went through as a kid, I would just sigh. He weaponized his asthma, Michelle. He'd get out of exams, chores, everything." Meanwhile, I was out there wiring attic fans in 100-degree heat. She'd give me that calm reason tone she always used when trying to mediate. That kind of childhood can shape how someone sees the world. Maybe he never learned to trust in his own abilities because everyone coddled him. I remember shaking my head frustrated, and yet somehow he always lands on his feet. It's like the universe has a special cushion just for him. She didn't argue. Not really. She just looked at me with those soft eyes and said that kind of resentment, it can eat away at you if you're not careful. I should have heard the warning then. I should have paid attention. But when you trust someone, when you truly believe, you're building a life together, you don't go looking for cracks. After 4 years together, we got engaged. It wasn't a public spectacle. No grand gestures or Instagram-worthy setups. It happened late one night in our kitchen, both of us exhausted after pulling off a huge electrical renovation at the county hospital. Michelle had spent weeks helping me coordinate subcontractors and rewrite blueprints, sometimes staying up until 2 a.m. with her laptop open on the couch. When the project finally wrapped, I just looked at her and said, "I can't imagine doing any of this without you." She smiled and leaned on the counter, her sleeves pushed up, hair pulled back, eyes tired but glowing. "So don't," she said. I reached into my toolbox. I'd been hiding the ring under a false bottom and held it out. "Marry me." Then she blinked. No tears. Just this warm, serious smile, like she'd known it was coming all along. "Yeah," she whispered. Of course, we didn't even take a photo. It just was solid, uncomplicated. At least that's how it felt. But about a year ago, things started shifting. Daniel had just come crawling back from yet another failed venture. This time, crypto trading. He burned through most of Dad's retirement fund in the process. I expected Dad to finally wash his hands of him, but instead he gave him a job in our office. Just let him handle the phones. "Stephen," Dad said one morning, waving off my concern, "he needs structure and maybe he can learn something from you." "Phones?" I asked. He couldn't even manage his own wallet. Dad gave me that tired look. "You're his brother. Help him." So Daniel started small filing, scheduling, but then somehow he kept finding ways to insert himself into more meaningful parts of the business. A casual, "I'll take that call," turned into him booking site visits. "Just helping out," he'd say with that boyish grin that always worked on my parents. Meanwhile, Michelle started spending more and more time at my parents' house. At least twice a week, I told myself. Sometimes more. She said she was helping Mom with wedding prep and taking care of invoices because she could concentrate better in a quieter space. That made sense, I suppose. I was in the field most of the time, crawling through basement and splicing conduit while she dealt with spreadsheets and scheduling. "Everything's more streamlined from here," she said once when I asked why she wasn't working from our apartment. "Your mom's kitchen table is bigger, and she keeps bringing me tea." I laughed then because it sounded sweet, logical. But as the months passed, I started noticing small things. Too small to accuse anyone of anything, but just enough to make my gut twist. Little shifts in behavior. Michelle, who had always been open with her phone, who used to toss it onto the couch and say, "Answer it if it's work," suddenly had a password on it. That was the first thing that didn't sit right. I never thought I'd feel weird about Michelle locking her phone. We'd always been open about that kind of thing. She had my passcode. I had hers. It was never even discussed, just a matter of trust. So when she changed it, I asked casually, not accusatorily, "Hey, I couldn't open your phone earlier to check the delivery app. Did you change the code?" "Oh yeah," she said lightly, not even looking up from her laptop. "Banking app required an update with added security stuff. You know how it is." I shrugged. "Sure, just let me know the new one." There was a pause, barely a second, but I noticed it. Then she smiled and rattled it off. But something in me was already turning over. Still, I let it go. I didn't want to become that guy. Paranoid, insecure, digging for dirt that might not be there. But then there was Daniel. Daniel, who had always been allergic to early mornings and clean shirts, suddenly looked like he belonged on the cover of GQ. New clothes, fresh haircut, expensive-smelling cologne I'd never seen him buy before. I bumped into him once by the office door, and he looked startled like he wasn't expecting anyone to be there. He tried to cover it with a laugh. "Whoa! Hey, man, didn't hear you come in?" I sniffed the air and raised an eyebrow. "What's that you wearing? Cologne now?" He chuckled and smirked. "Got to keep up appearances. Janet said I was smelling like printer toner, right?" He started showing up on time, even early some days, which was a miracle in itself. He'd stay late, filing, organizing, saying things like just trying to lighten the load for Michelle. No, she's carrying a lot. I started noticing how often he said her name. And Michelle changed too. She'd start talking about Daniel at dinner, dropping compliments like pebbles in a pond. He actually organized the whole week schedule in 2 hours. I was shocked. Or, when he focuses, he's really sharp. I think he's finally found something he wants to do. At first, I tried to agree just to be supportive. Well, good. He needs direction. But whenever I made even the slightest critical remark about Daniel, like when he missed a suppler's call or double-booked an appointment, Michelle would tense up. "Stephen, he's trying. Can't you cut him some slack?" I blinked. I have been cutting him slack. My whole life has been cutting Daniel slack. She folded her arms, lips tight. "That's not fair. It's not. You weren't around when he crashed Dad's truck and I had to take the blame. Or when he dropped out of community college and somehow I had to cover the tuition loan." She turned back to her laptop. "People grow, Stephen. Maybe he's just growing." I didn't like how defensive she got, and I really didn't like how protective. Around that time I started getting strange vibes from Janet, our receptionist of 15 years. She was like family, call me kiddo, and brought in muffins for everyone on Fridays. But lately, she'd give me these looks, long concerned glances when Michelle and Daniel walked by together. Once when I mentioned that I was heading out early for a site visit, she hesitated, her voice low. "You might want to pop in a bit earlier than usual next time, sweetheart. Just trust your gut." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Nothing. Probably just me being old and suspicious." It wasn't nothing. One day, I returned early from a residential job because we ran out of conduit. I didn't text ahead, didn't think I needed to. I walked into the office expecting the usual. the low hum of printers, Janet chatting on the phone, maybe Michelle with her head buried in invoices. Instead, I found the break room door half open. Michelle and Daniel were inside whispering and laughing, really laughing, the kind of laughter that leaves you breathless, that belongs in private moments. The moment I stepped in, they jumped like guilty teenagers. "Oh, hey," Michelle said too quickly. "Didn't expect you back yet." Daniel coughed, rubbed the back of his neck. "We were just talking about the supplier who sent the wrong fuses. Michelle told me that story about you losing your temper at that guy in Fresno. She avoided my eyes. He looked smug and something in my stomach turned cold. That night over dinner I watched her closely. Her stories were shorter, her phone never left her pocket. She didn't ask about my day. When I brought up wedding venues just to test the waters, she waved it off. Let's put that on hold for a bit. Yeah, I'm swamped at the office. She barely even looked up. We used to visit job sites together all the time. She'd bring me coffee, check the blueprints, laugh about the chaos of drywall crews. We made it a ritual, but now she was always too busy, buried in paperwork and emails, working from the office with Daniel. It was a Sunday dinner, one of those forced family gatherings my mother insisted on every month, like a tradition we were all pretending still held meaning. 6 months ago, I remember it too clearly. We were seated around the table. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, the usual suspects. Michelle sat next to me, but she wasn't with me. Her eyes kept darting to her phone, screen lighting up every few minutes. She barely touched her food, and when Daniel cracked one of his dumb jokes about our dad mixing up employee paychecks again, she let out this awkward, high-pitched laugh like she was trying too hard to belong to something I didn't understand. I leaned closer, keeping my voice low. "You okay?" She blinked, put her phone face down. "Yeah, just tired. It's been a long week. You've barely said a word." She shrugged. I don't want to argue." "Who said anything about arguing?" She sighed, still not looking at me. "You always find something wrong with Daniel." "I just think he's trying. Maybe you should give him a break." That hit differently. Michelle had never defended Daniel before, not like that, not in front of everyone. I looked at her, really looked, and felt that first real twist in my gut. A sharp, quiet warning I didn't want to name. But I let it go. Just like I had with the phone. Just like I had with the laughter, the late nights, the canceled site visits. I told myself I was overthinking, working too hard, imagining things because I was tired, because I wanted to believe in us. In her, the following months were like a loop on repeat. Michelle staying late, Daniel hanging around like a born-again businessman, and me, I buried myself in 12-hour days, contracts, job sites. Over time, every ounce of effort poured into building a future I thought we both wanted, a future she was, quietly walking away from, right into the arms of my own brother. Then came the Tuesday, the one that cracked everything. It was just after 2:00 p.m. I was up on a ladder in the back of the Ridgeway warehouse adjusting conduit lines. We'd hit a snag with the main junction box. My phone buzzed in my pocket and I almost ignored it. But then I saw her name. Michelle. I answered, hey, what's up?" She was already crying, breathless, panicked. "Stephen, I need to see you. Please. It's important." My stomach dropped. "What happened? Is it your mom? My dad?" "No," she choked out. "Please. Can you come home?" I can't do this over the phone." I climbed down immediately, heart pounding. "Okay, I'm on my way." I told my guys there was a family emergency, grabbed my keys, and bolted. The whole drive back, my mind flipped through. Possibilities like flashcards, car accident, illness, maybe something with the wedding, or a health scare, but not what I found. When I pulled into the driveway, she was there still in her car, just sitting, head down, hands clenched around the steering wheel, like she was hanging on for dear life. I parked beside her and walked over, knocked lightly on the window. "Come, inside. Let's talk." She shook her head, eyes red and swollen. "No, I can't. I need to say it here." I opened the passenger door and slid in beside her. The silence was suffocating. She didn't speak at first. Her chest rose and fell in stutters, the tears already streaming. "I'm pregnant," she said suddenly, like it hurt to even form the words. For a second, I didn't hear anything else. My brain just latched onto that word pregnant. My mouth fell open in shock, and then, against every warning bell inside me, I felt joy. I saw flashes of tiny socks of cribs and paint swatches of me holding her hand at the first ultrasound. "That's wow," I whispered. "Michelle, that's amazing." She shook her head hard. No, it's not." I looked at her confused. "What do you mean?" "There's something else," she said, barely able to get the words out. It might not be yours?" The world tilted. I didn't breathe. I didn't speak. I just stared at her, waiting for her to take it back. But she didn't. Her hands gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, and she turned her face away like she couldn't bear to look at me anymore. And in that moment, every puzzle piece snapped into place. The phone, the laughter, the distance. Daniel. I sat frozen, barely blinking. My hands curled into fists in my lap. My tongue felt thick in my mouth, useless. My thoughts spun, crashing into each other like waves in a storm. She was crying harder now. Her tears challenged me. "Tell me it's not Daniel," I said, my voice sharp, trembling with restrained fury. My fists curled tight on my knees, nails biting into my skin. I stared at Michelle, watching every twitch of her lip, every flicker in her eyes. Her breath hitched. "It's not," she said quickly, almost too quickly, her voice small, wavering. I didn't believe her. "Look at me and say that again." She shook her head slightly, not meeting my gaze. "Stephen, please. It's not what you think." "Then what is it, Michelle?" My voice cracked like a whip inside the car, bouncing off the windows. She winced, her eyes full of guilt. "It only happened once," she whispered. "It was a mistake. We were both overwhelmed. It just happened." I stared at her numb. So, it was Daniel. Her silence was answer enough. She didn't deny it again. Just sat there, shoulders shaking, eyes red. "Tell me the truth," I said again. But this time it came out quieter, colder. I felt hollow, like everything had dropped out from under me. She swallowed hard, still not looking at me. It was 3, maybe 4 months ago. The math hit me like a punch to the ribs. I closed my eyes, trying to process it. "Does he know?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yesterday, I told him yesterday, so he'd known for a full day before me. My own brother." I opened the door slowly and stepped out. The afternoon sun didn't feel warm. It felt harsh, glaring, fake. She followed me out, reaching for my arm, but I pulled away. "Stephen, please, can we just talk? Talk? What is there left to say?" I was shaking now, but not from the cold. From the sheer effort it took to keep myself from screaming. "You two regretted it weeks ago, but still kept me in the dark. You planned a future with me while protecting him. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" I snapped, my voice rising. "Was it a joke? A dare? Was that what you were laughing about? In the break room?" She flinched like I'd struck her. I stared at her, my heart beating out of rhythm. "If you weren't pregnant, would you have ever told me?" Michelle didn't answer. Her silence hit harder than anything she could have said. It was the final blow. I turned without another word and climbed into my truck. The door slammed shut with a violence I couldn't control. The engine roared to life, gravel kicking up behind me as I tore down the road toward the only place I knew Daniel would be, my parents' house, our old home, his new sanctuary. I parked crooked on the driveway and stormed in without knocking. I marched straight in and found him there, feet up on the table, scrolling through his phone like he hadn't a care in the damn world. "Daniel," I said. He looked up, and as soon as he saw my face, his expression crumpled. He knew. Oh, he knew exactly why I was there. "Stephen, Wait. Listen, please. But I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his face before I could think, before I could even remember what restraint felt like. The punch sent him toppling out of the chair and into the bookshelf, scattering papers and photo frames to the ground. He shouted in pain, grabbing his face. But I wasn't done. Years of resentment, betrayal, jealousy, all surged forward. I lunged at him again, caught him by the collar, slammed him back into the floor. You son of a Ward! You slept with my fiancé! My life was nothing off limits to you. Stephen, stop! I didn't mean to. I didn't! He gasped between blows, trying to shield his face. I didn't care. I didn't hear him. My vision had gone red, hands moving without thought. Then I felt someone pulling me back. 2 sets of arms. No, 3. Stephen, that's enough, my father's voice barked as he grabbed my shoulder. One of the employees who was at Out Home that time, Mike, I think, was holding me by the waist. Another, maybe Louise, was trying to lift Daniel off the ground. Get off me, I growled, struggling against them, but they didn't let go. My fists were still clenched, blood dripping from my knuckles. Daniel's nose was already a mess, his eyes wide with a fear I'd never seen in him before. And still, some part of me wanted to go back and hit him again. But they held me stronger together, keeping me from sinking further into the chaos I had just unleashed. They tried to separate us. You're crazy, Daniel shouted, blood still dripping from his nose. You don't even know what you're talking about. I shook off the last grip holding me back, my breath heavy, my knuckles burning. You think I'm crazy? You slept with my fiancé, Daniel. You knew everything. I told you about the proposal, the house, the names we picked for our future kids. She came to me, Stephen. He snapped, his face twisted with something I couldn't quite name. Shame, maybe, or arrogance. She was the one who said she felt trapped. She said she didn't feel seen. She understood me. We understood each other. I stood there, blinking in disbelief. Was this real? Was I actually hearing this? You're telling me you're in love with her now? I asked, voice low, venomous. He didn't back down. Yeah, I am, and she loves me, too. My stomach turned. That was when Dad, still catching his breath from holding me back, tried to step in. Enough, both of you! He raised a hand like he was a judge calling order in his courtroom. This is not how we solve things. We're a family. We're not a family, I snapped. Not anymore. Then Daniel looked right at Dad and said, Clear as glass. She's carrying my baby. Everything stopped. The air went still. Dad's face drained of color. Mom, who had just come into the room with a glass of water, dropped it with a shatter. She stared at Daniel as if she didn't know him at all. Then she broke down, crying, loud, messy, and raw, crumpling into the nearest chair. In the middle of it all, Janet, our office manager, longtime friend of the family, grabbed her bag and walked out without saying a single word. I heard the front door shut, and that was it. She never came back. I turned slowly to Dad. Well, now that's your problem. Not mine, Stephen. Wait, Dad said, stepping toward me, his voice trembling. We can fix this. We'll talk it through. Family is family. I cut him off. Daniel stopped being my family the moment he touched Michelle. Dad didn't say another word. Maybe he knew nothing he said would matter now. I left without looking back. When I got home, Michelle was still there, sitting on the couch, hands clasped, eyes red and swollen. She looked up when I walked in, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Stephen, she said softly, rising. I never wanted to hurt you. Everything just got complicated. I didn't know how to stop it. I stood by the door, my jaw tight. You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave. She blinked, stunned. Please, let's talk. We can. I don't care. Where you go, I said. Just be gone by tomorrow. Tears welled again in her eyes. But the baby, what if? I cut her off coldly. You better hope it's Daniel's, because if it's mine, we'll do a DNA test and settle things with lawyers. Don't try to contact me. She tried to say something else, maybe to beg, maybe to apologize, but I was already walking to the bedroom to grab the bag I'd packed in my head 100 times before this moment. I left again, this time without slamming the door. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing how much it all hurt. I drove straight to Mike's place. He answered the door in gym shorts and a confused look. "Man, you look like hell." "I need a place to crash," I said. "Don't ask questions." He nodded. "Say no more. Couch is yours." I stayed there for days. Mike didn't pry. He just kept the fridge stocked, tossed me the remote, and made space. A real friend. While I was gone, Michelle moved out. For about a week I went completely dark. Turned off my phone, shut the blinds, didn't answer the door. I needed time. Time to breathe. Time to wrap my head around the betrayal that had blown my life apart. Mike respected that. He didn't ask questions. He just let me be. When I finally turned my phone back on, it buzzed for almost 2 straight minutes. 50 missed calls, dozens of texts. Most were from Mom and Dad, a few from Michelle, even 2 from Daniel, which I didn't bother opening. Just seeing his name made my jaw clench. I only paid attention to the messages from my mom. Hers were desperate, rambling, emotional, filled, with typos like she couldn't even hold the phone straight while typing. "Please come talk to your father. He says he has a solution. Please, Stephen, I can't take this anymore." I knew Dad well enough to know his solutions always came dressed up, like wisdom, but were really just control in disguise. Still, Mom's voice echoed in my head, so full of pain. And maybe deep down I needed closure, something final. I drove over late in the afternoon as the sun was starting to slip behind the hills. The house looked the same, but everything felt off. Like walking into a place that had been emptied of warmth. Mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were puffy, her hair tied back in a careless knot, sleeves rolled up like she'd been cleaning just to stay busy. She tried to hug me, but I sidestepped it, offering only a quick pat on her shoulder. Dad was in his usual spot, his worn, out recliner like a throne. Stern, back straight, hands clasped over his stomach like a judge ready to deliver his sentence. And then there was him. Daniel walked in from the hallway, silent. He had a nasty purple bruise across the bridge of his nose, puffed slightly at the edges, a dark reminder of the last time we'd seen each other. The sight stirred something in me, a twisted cocktail of satisfaction and fury. He didn't speak. He didn't even look at me. Just stood there like a boy waiting for punishment. Dad cleared his throat like he always did before launching into something he thought was profound. "Son," he began, voice even and calculated, "I've been thinking of a solution, one that benefits everyone." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" Ignoring the sarcasm, he went on, "Given that you have no intention of reconciling with Michelle, and considering her condition, the most sensible path forward is for her and Daniel to get married." I blinked slowly, then let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Yeah, they deserve each other, but he wasn't done." "They're starting a family," he said, matter of fact. "And since that's the case, I believe it's time for Daniel to take over the business. You'll train him, he'll learn the trade. With Michelle's experience in the office, everything will fall into place." I stared at him, incredulous. "Train him, that piece of F.U. Watch your language." Dad snapped, giving me that steely glare he reserved for when someone dared challenge his authority. "Your brother has shown interest in learning, and I want you to train him." I let out a sound that was half laugh, half growl. "Are you seriously asking me to train the guy who screwed my fiancé, possibly impregnated her to take over the business I built from the ground up while they play house and raise a kid that might even be mine?" My voice had risen, but I didn't care anymore. My chest felt like it was on fire. Mom started crying again, clutching a tissue like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Her sobs filled the room, but no one moved to comfort her. Daniel still hadn't looked at me. He just stared at the floor, shoulders slightly hunched, like the weight of everything was finally starting to hit him. Like, maybe, Just maybe, he felt. Ashamed. Then Dad played his final card, his ace in the hole. "The business is still in my name," he said, his voice low but sharp like a blade. "If you're not going to help your brother, maybe it's time you look for another job." The room went silent. Everything around me blurred, but his words rang loud and clear. After everything I'd done, the long nights, the clients I brought in, the systems I built, the profits I turned, none of it mattered. Not against Daniel's screw-up turned soap opera. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a father, but a man who would burn down everything I'd built just to prop up the idiot he still called his boy. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. This was never about fairness. It was always about favoritism. I stood slowly, pushing the chair back with a low scrape across the hardwood. My mother instinctively reached for my arm, eyes wide and pleading. "Stephen, please don't leave like this. We're a family," she whispered. I pulled away gently but firmly. My voice came out cold and steady. "Screw this family. I'm done. Good luck with your new dream team." Daniel stepped forward, his tone hesitant. "Steve, look, man. I didn't mean for it to." I cut him off with a glare sharp enough to stop him mid-sentence. "Don't," I warned. "Don't ever call me that again. I'm not your brother. You lost that right the moment you touched Michelle." He looked, stunned like he didn't expect me to say it out loud. As I turned to go, I paused in the doorway just long enough to throw one last warning over my shoulder. "And if you ever disrespect me again, I'll break more than just your pride." Dad jumped, up from the recliner, his voice booming. "This is not how family behaves. We all make mistakes. Where's your loyalty? Where's your sense of forgiveness?" I didn't even turn around. Loyalty. Forgiveness. Don't preach those words to me while you're rewarding betrayal. Then I started towards the door. Then I stopped and turned around. "Oh, I forgot you, Mr. Owner of the business." I raised both my hands and gave him a 2 middle finger salute and said, "Consider this my resignation." I walked to Daniel and said, "Time to punch out one final time." Then I landed a powerful right-handed hook on his jaw and knocked him out. My shift is over, and then I walked out. The next morning, I began contacting all our key clients. Every name I'd brought into the fold, every contractor and partner I'd built rapport with over the years. I kept it professional but honest. "Hi, this is Stephen. Just wanted to let you know I'll no longer be with the company. If you'd like recommendations for other trusted teams, I'd be happy to pass those along. Thanks again for all the great work. Together." Some were shocked, some were pissed. A few asked me flat out what the hell happened. I didn't indulge the gossip, but I made it clear I had my reasons, and I wasn't sticking around for the circus my father was now calling a new chapter. Dad called that evening, voice full of rage. "Are you trying to sabotage me? You're poisoning our reputation, my reputation." I calmly replied, "I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm just informing people of my departure. If they don't want to work with your new ideal team, that's on them, not me." He hung up on me. A week later, Daniel and Michelle, lovebirds of the year, got married in some quiet courthouse ceremony. No big church wedding, no family celebration, just a tidy, legal merging of guilt and delusion. I didn't attend. Obviously, Dad not only attended, he paid for it. Gave them a down payment for a house, too, like it was some kind of prize for best betrayal in a supporting role. And me, I was left standing in the wreckage. No apologies, no acknowledgement of the damage, just the absurd, toxic expectation that I'd move on while they posed for pictures pretending they were some picture-perfect family. That was when I made my final decision. I walked away from all of it. I accepted an offer from a competing firm that had been courting me for over a year, one that actually saw my worth. They offered better pay, a senior position, and most importantly, something I hadn't felt in a long time: respect. I started fresh on my own terms. A new office, new team, new energy, and no one bringing their drama from Sunday dinners into the conference room. No legacy baggage, no threats about who owned the name on the sign. just real work and people who appreciated what I brought to the table. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I had everything I needed to succeed without the family drama. After walking, away from the wreckage that used to be my family and my future, I threw myself into rebuilding. Not just my career, but myself. I started from scratch, brick by damn brick. I got my master electrician license, a milestone that Dad always scoffed at, saying I wasn't ready or didn't have the discipline. He was wrong. Turns out the only thing I ever needed was to step out from under his shadow. Once I did, I realized how far I could go without someone constantly undermining me. It was freeing, empowering. The next 4 months were blissfully quiet. No Daniel, no Michelle, no fatherly lectures or guilt trips. My mother messaged occasionally, but I told her firmly that I didn't want to hear about them. I needed distance. I needed peace. She respected that more or less, but last week, just after 11 p.m., my phone lit up with her name. I stared at it for a moment, debating whether to ignore it, but something in my gut told me this wasn't just another guilt-laced message. I picked up. Her voice came through ragged and soaked in panic. Stephen, please. I know it's late, but I need you to talk to your father. Please just listen to him. I sighed, about to end the call, but then I heard the tremble in her voice. Real, raw emotion. Not just disappointment or desperation, but fear. We're about to lose everything, she sobbed. Please, I know you have every right to say no, but just hear him out. Curiosity and concern mixed into a knot in my chest. Put him on, I said quietly. A few muffled shuffles later, I heard his voice. Stephen, he said, almost unsure of himself. There was no bark, no pride, no condescension. He sounded hollow, defeated, like the weight of the world had finally crushed the ego right out of him. That more than anything made me pause. I didn't want to call, he continued. Your mother insisted. But she's right. We need help. He paused, maybe to catch his breath or swallow what little pride he had left. You were right about Daniel. I thought if I gave him enough responsibility, he'd rise to the occasion, but he's in over his head, way over. I let the silence linger, giving him room to admit more. And he did. We lost 3 commercial contracts, big ones, city jobs. He cut corners badly. One client is threatening to sue. The inspectors flagged. A list of violations as long as my arm. What kind of violations? I asked, though I already had a guess. His voice was quieter now, almost ashamed. Wrong gauge wiring, no grounding. Junction boxes left open. It's a fire hazard, Steve. The city might pull our license. I closed my eyes and ran a hand over my face. Jesus Christ, I muttered. Those are basic mistakes. You learn that stuff in your first year. I know, he said quickly. It gets worse. Of course it does, I muttered. Instead of hiring experienced electricians when the problems started piling up, Daniel, in his infinite wisdom, had promoted one of his old drinking buddies from college. Wait, what? I snapped. You mean to tell me that instead of bringing in licensed techs, he gave the top position to some idiot he used to do keg stands with? My father, he made him head of electricity. That guy, Daniel's friend, Dad said with a bitter laugh. He never even had credentials. No license, nothing. So, you put the electrical division in the hands of a guy whose only experience is probably changing a light bulb while hungover? I asked. Dad didn't respond right away, which said more than words could. He didn't even know how to read a multimeter, Dad admitted finally. He thought amps were the same as volts. I squeezed my eyes shut. You handed over a 30-year business to a pair of amateurs. One with no qualifications, and the other with a bruised ego and zero common sense. That's not fair, he muttered. No, what's not fair is that you made me train that idiot for 3 months, pretending like everything would work out. I snapped. There was a long silence before he spoke again. He told me he had it under control. Michelle said she was helping him in the office, staying late most nights. Of course she was. My ex-fiancé, loyal and devoted now that there was a title and a mortgage involved. What about the financials? I asked. You mentioned loans. Dad sighed again. Yeah. Daniel took out multiple business loans, all in the company's name. Didn't tell anyone. Pocketed the cash. Best I can tell. I blinked. You mean he stole from the company? There was no denying it now. He didn't even pay the liability insurance. Dad said, and I heard the shame in his voice like a man who'd finally realized the fire was already burning down the walls. When I called the insurance company, they said the policy was canceled 2 months ago due to non-payment. And you had no idea. He said he was handling it. I paced the floor, my heart racing. Let me guess. He also didn't report payments in the books. No, they were missing, not even logged. We can't trace where most of the money went. You can't, I said grimly. Start with his garage. Check under his bed. How's that new car he's suddenly driving? Dad groaned. Yeah, that too. And the designer jackets, watches. Michelle's got a new bag every week. Unbelievable. What took me a decade of hard work and apprenticeship to build, Daniel had torched in months. With a smug grin and probably one of those handshakes where his pinky stuck out, he ruined it. Dad said like the words were foreign to him. All of it. I didn't see it coming. No, I said you did. You just chose not to look. There was a pause. And then quietly he said, I started reviewing the books when the insurance company reached out. That's when I realized Michelle had been helping him clean things up. She was there every night in the office. Late, right? I muttered. Late-night QuickBooks dates. Nothing suspicious there. The books were a mess, Stephen. He'd been manipulating them, deleting transactions, adjusting balances, and creating fake vendor payments. Janet tried to warn me. That made me stop. Janet? Janet warned you? Yeah, Dad said reluctantly. She came to me more than once, told me things weren't adding up, that deposits were missing, bills weren't being paid. She even brought me a few bounce checks, and you didn't listen. She was always so dramatic, he said defensively. I thought she was just overreacting. You refused to listen. My father's voice cracked like old wood under pressure, brittle and uncertain. I'd never heard him sound that way before. We need you back, he said, each word weighed down with desperation. Help us fix this mess. I'll sign over control. Majority shares. Whatever it takes. You'd run everything. Total control, Stephen. I let the silence stretch, holding the phone to my ear while staring out the window into the darkness. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part, maybe the tired, bitter part, just felt numb. I'll think about it, I said flatly. That wasn't good enough for him. Please, we're going to lose everything. The company, the house, your mother. She's not well. Her health's been declining. Stress mostly. She's barely eating. He paused for effect, then added with a tremble that almost sounded rehearsed. She cries herself to sleep. I almost ended the call, but then he dropped the final card he had left to play. We have cut ties with Daniel and Michelle. I raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Then I spoke clear and final. Not my circus, not my monkeys. He went quiet for a moment. Then, as expected, came the guilt trip. The same speech he gave me when I was a teenager, and wanted to move out. When I questioned his decisions, when I first suggested we bring in outside partners to modernize the business. Stephen, this is your family. Don't throw us away. I know I made mistakes, but loyalty means showing up, especially when it's hard. You're better than this. No, I said sharply, cutting him off. Don't talk to me about loyalty. You made your choice. When you handed everything over to Daniel, that I laughed bitterly. Well, that was the family you chose. Now deal with it. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. A few hours later, my phone rang again. It was my mother. Stephen, she said, her voice cracking immediately. Your father. He's not exaggerating. We're weeks away from losing the house. The creditors are calling every day now. And I can't handle Much more of this. Her words broke something inside me because she didn't deserve this. Not the lies, not the betrayal, and certainly not the fallout. You know, I never took sides. She went on softly even when maybe I should have. I just wanted to keep the peace. I wanted us all together. I stayed silent, my throat tight. "I'm scared," she whispered. I swallowed hard and spoke gently. "Mom, you can come stay with me. The house is quiet. You'd have your own space. You don't need to live through this. But it's an offer for you. Not Dad. Not Daniel." She took a shaky breath on the other end. "I can't leave your father alone." "I understand," I said, trying to keep the sadness out of my voice. "That's your decision. My door's open, but only to you." I already knew her answer. My mother loved with blind devotion. Always had. And knowing her, I knew she would not come. It was 2 days later when Michelle's name flashed on my phone. For a second, I just stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen, debating whether to open the message. Curiosity won. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need help. The baby is yours. I have the test results. Daniel has taken all our money and left me alone. I need your help." I read it. Once. Then again it felt like a stone had dropped into my stomach, sudden and heavy, as if I had been punched from the inside. My ears started ringing. I had imagined this moment before, had rehearsed in my head how I'd feel, what I'd say, what I'd do if it ever came to light that the child might be mine. But I didn't feel righteous anger. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't even feel shocked, just tired. I sent a message. "Before I accept the child, I will get a DNA test done." No test. No support. As if life had waited until I'd finally caught my breath, only to grab me by the collar and drag me right back into the chaos I'd spent so much time and effort escaping. I didn't reply, and I don't plan to, not because I'm heartless, but because I've already lost so much of myself trying to fix what other people broke. This was a punch I saw coming from miles away, and still, it stunned me. I thought that was the worst of it, but life, as it often does, wasn't done with me yet. Last night, I came home from work just after 7 p.m. It was dark, chilly, and I was looking forward to reheating leftovers and falling asleep on the couch. I pulled into the driveway, and that's when I saw it. My mom's old Honda Civic parked at the curb. I frowned. I hadn't heard it approach. Then I saw him. My father was sitting on the front steps of my house. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not just older, smaller. His shoulders hunched, his coat loose and threadbare. I recognized it immediately. The same brown jacket he used to wear when he taught me how to fix circuits in the garage as a kid. Now it hung on him like an afterthought. His beard was patchy and wild, like it had been weeks since he bothered with a razor. I parked slowly, not sure what I was about to walk into. When I stepped out, we locked eyes. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice low. He wasn't barking orders or talking like a foreman this time. No edge, no pride, just a man stripped bare. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, come in." He followed me inside quietly, I scanning the place. I could tell he was surprised. My house isn't flashy, but it's clean, warm, well lit. Hardwood floors, soft gray walls, a little gallery of frame certifications, and electrical licenses near the entryway, a new sofa I'd saved for. The air smelled faintly of lavender and citrus, my habit of diffusing oils in the evenings. Simple but mine. He didn't say a word, just looked around, taking it all in. I stood near the kitchen counter and waited. I'll admit it. Part of me wanted him to see me, to understand with no room for denial that I had built something solid alone, without his help, in spite of his doubt. This house, modest as it is, represents something big for me. It was the first major purchase I made after my last promotion. I didn't co-sign with anyone. I didn't borrow from family. Every wall, every fixture, every bit of furniture, I chose it. I paid for it. It is nothing spectacular, but it is mine, and it is a personal pride. My father stood in the living room like a man in a foreign country, unsure of the customs or the language. He looked at my walls, my shelves, the faint hum of my air purifier. His eyes lingered on the diploma I had framed, not out of vanity, but because it reminded me I earned everything myself. He didn't seem to know how to speak to me unless he was giving orders. Eventually, he gave up trying to find the right posture and sank onto the couch like someone who hadn't sat in comfort for weeks. His voice was low and raw. "The company's gone, Stephen," he said, hands rubbing together slowly. "Basically bankrupt." I didn't move, just listened. 2 commercial clients are suing us over the mess Daniel made. Said he abandoned the projects halfway through. Wiring jobs that failed inspections, thousands lost in materials, timelines missed by months. He paused, swallowing hard. And the rest of our regular clients, they left. Or got out. Complaints, refund requests, threats of legal action. No one wants to deal with us anymore. We've had to shut down the phone lines. I folded my arms. Also, he hesitated, like it pained him to say it. The bank will foreclose on the house next month. We're out of extensions, out of time. Silence stretched between us like a growing crack in the floor. Then he looked up, met my eyes. "I should have listened to you." That stopped me cold. The man who never admitted fault, who never once said you were right, who made every mistake feel like my burden to carry was finally saying the words. I blinked. "It's good to hear." I replied evenly, "But it's late. Really late. I know." His voice cracked. He reached into the folder he brought and pulled out a stack of neatly organized papers. Legal documents, contracts, forms. "I transfer 100% of the company to your name. No conditions." He looked up. "You could save it. Stephen, you always knew what you were doing. You saw what was coming. But I was too proud to see it." I didn't answer right away. I sat beside the folder, not touching it, just looking at the name of the company embossed on the front. My name could have been next to it all along if things had gone differently. And months ago, that would have been everything I ever wanted. Recognition, trust, finally being seen as the man I'd worked so hard to become. But now I just felt cold. I glanced at the papers, but one question formed and refused to leave. "What happens to Daniel?" I asked quietly. His face fell. He already took his share, and that is exactly why I am in this mess. Of course he did. "Same thing as always," I muttered. "He causes a disaster and runs instead of facing it." My father rubbed his face with both hands. "He's still your brother." I stared at him. "No. He stopped being my brother the day he decided to betray this family." I let the silence land. I wanted it to sting. It hurt him. I saw it. His eyes dropped. His posture sank further into the couch. But I didn't regret saying it. He needed to feel that weight. Still, in a tired, hoarse-arrow voice, he tried again. "Stephen, if we work together, we can fix it. Revive the company. Bring the family back." I almost laughed. "Dad," I said, shaking my head, a bitter smile forming. "You're not listening. I don't want the business. I don't need your help. It's over." He opened his mouth to argue again, but I cut him off. "You think it's still my legacy, that it means something to me now? You gave it away to him even after everything he did. Even after he messed with my fiancé, you made that choice." I pointed to the folder. "Now you can live with the consequences of your choice." He tried one more time, as if tugging on the last frayed thread between us. "She's suffering, Stephen," he said, voice low but intense. "Your mother, seeing the family fall apart like this, is killing her." I took a deep breath. "She's always welcome. Here," I said plainly, "but only her. That offer hasn't changed." His shoulders slumped and he rubbed his hands over his face like he was trying to wipe away the years. "She won't leave me," he whispered. "She says she can't." "Then she'll have to bear the consequences too," I said, softer than before, but no less resolute. The consequences of his actions of your choices. My father sat still, unmoving. The silence hung between us, no longer sharp or heavy, just empty. After a long pause, he looked up at me, more fragile than I'd ever seen him. "Where did I go wrong?" he asked almost inaudibly, as if asking himself more than me. For a moment, my instincts kicked in. I wanted to lash out, to recount every instance of favoritism, every time I was dismissed, every sacrifice I made that went unnoticed while Daniel was excused again and again. I wanted to remind him how quickly he had handed over the family business to the son who wrecked it, and how blind he was when Michelle started drifting towards someone she had no business being near, but I didn't. Instead, I looked him in the eye and said quietly, "You didn't fail. You got exactly what you wanted. Daniel at the helm. That served you until it didn't." He didn't answer. He only nodded barely, like the weight of it had finally sunk in. Then he stood up, not in the authoritative way I remembered from my childhood, but slow, tired, as though gravity had taken permanent hold of his bones. I walked him to the door in silence. When he turned back one last time, the man in front of me looked 20 years older than the one who had arrived. He left without another word. This morning my mother messaged me. She said they're moving in with her sister in Ohio next month. My father will look for work there. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just asked once again if there was any way I could host both of them at my house. I gave her the same answer I've given since the beginning. "You're welcome whenever you want, Mom, but only you." She didn't argue, didn't plead, just replied with a polite thank you and a heart emoji, as if she were trying to pretend this wasn't the unraveling of an entire lifetime. I know she won't come. She never chooses herself over him. Michelle, on the other hand, hasn't stopped messaging me. First vague apologies, then updates about the baby, then a photo, then another. I told her to contact my lawyer. I don't want direct contact. Not anymore. She never contacted him. I now suspect that the child could be from Daniel, or maybe worst, it could be someone else. How do I trust her word? But I had it figured out for me. No DNA test, no child support. Michelle not contacting my lawyer gave strength to the idea that the child could be either Daniel's or someone else, but not mine. This would remain an open chapter in my life, and I am not running after its closure. As for Daniel, I don't expect to hear from him, and honestly, I don't want to. The strangest thing is I don't feel vindicated. There's no satisfaction in seeing them lose everything, no triumph in being proven right. There's no joy, no sorrow, just a sense of clarity. For me, it is over. I've been dating someone for about a month now. Her name's Mia. We're taking it slow. No pressure, no big declarations, just enjoying each other's company. She's kind. She listens. And maybe what I appreciate the most is that she doesn't try to fix me or get me to open up before I'm ready. The other night, we were walking through the park, sipping coffee from paper cups when she gently asked, "So, what's your family like?" I stared at the ducks for a moment, watching them drift across the pond. Then, I took a deep breath and simply said, "We're not close." She didn't press. She just nodded, gave my hand a soft squeeze and said, "That must be hard. Maybe someday I'll tell her the full story about Daniel, Michelle, the business, about betrayal, dressed up as blood. But not yet. For now I want something that's just mine, a part of my life untouched by the old drama, free from toxic loyalty and silent competitions. Something unburdened. No shadows, no ghosts. I've spent too long begging for attention from people who never looked my way unless they needed something. It's exhausting trying to earn love from those who dole it out, like it's a limited resource. I'm done with that. As for Michelle, well, she made her choices. She knew what she was doing. She knew what she was breaking. I won't ghost her. I won't disappear like Daniel. If the baby turns out to be mine, I'll step up. I will take responsibility, because I'm not like him. I don't run away from what's mine. But that doesn't mean I'll pretend nothing happened. Michelle dynamited that bridge herself. Whatever relationship we could have had, friendship, civility, peace, it was obliterated the moment she climbed into bed with my brother. So now the only bridge left is the one the court will build. Visitation, child support, paternity results. Logistics, not affection. She chose her path just like the rest of them. And now, like the rest of them, she'll have to live with the fallout. Still, I'd be lying if I said I don't worry. I do. Sometimes late at night, the thought creeps in, what kind of life will this child have? What kind of story are they being born into? A mess, no doubt. But we don't get to rewrite the past. We can only show up for the present and try to do the right thing moving forward. That's what I keep reminding myself. And maybe, just maybe, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong or watching them fall. Sometimes the best revenge is simply to live well. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.